Today we will be making Disney inspired ears for my Disney trip. I apologize now about the video quality, but hopefully you all can still see the picture with this video. So first thing I did was get fabric from Hobby Lobby. I got their blank headbands as well, and then I had some gems. You're also going to need a hot glue gun. The next thing you'll need is cardboard, scissors, a marker, and ears if you already have it. So what I'm doing is I'm tracing a template for my 4 ears that I'll need with the cardboard. I used random cardboard from around my house, so you really don't have to buy anything. And then I do make a curve to make it so it's like an ear like structure basically. I repeat this step 4 times. First by cutting out the piece that I just drew and then using that as a template for the next 3 pieces. Cutting the cardboard was a bit harder than I expected, so if you have industrial or heavy duty scissors, you'll definitely need them. You don't want to use fabric scissors if that's what you use, but you really want to just take your time. I did leave a little extra allowance on the cardboard. You'll see why a little bit later, but yeah, definitely take your time when it comes to cutting the cardboard. As I mentioned, once you have that first piece, you're going to want to trace that piece 3 separate times so that way you have 4 different earpieces and then you'll keep 2 together and 2 together. The biggest thing you want to make sure is that they're evenly spaced out and seamless. This is how your 4 pieces should look, and then once you're done, you're going to want to put those to the side, grab your fabric and your headband. Next, you're going to want to cut your fabric for your headband. I don't have exact measurements, but you're just going to have to figure out, what works best for you and your size headband. So once you kind of measure it out, you're going to want to make sure you cut it into a rectangle. Again, my scissors were not the best ones. I'm going to have to upgrade my scissors, but you're going to want to cut it out into a rectangle. Leave some seam allowance for your fabric. But essentially, you're going to want to keep cutting. I did cut off that trim there a little bit later in the video. Once your fabric is cut out, you're going to want to remeasure the fabric just to make sure you have an idea of how you're going to glue it onto the headband. Here I'm kind of trying to figure out, what's the best way. And then I realized I had a little bit too much fabric. So definitely adjust it to your needs. That way you have a seamless process. From there, start hot gluing the hot glue onto the headband and slowly putting the fabric onto the headband. This is a tedious process, but patience is key and you'll have a great result at the end. I did use thumb protectors and I did get them from the Dollar Tree. They were helpful, but they kept sliding off, so I did end up taking them off a little bit later. But as you can see, I just keep going in with my hot glue gun, really just taking my time, as I mentioned, slowly working my way to the other side of the headband. Once you finish the outside of your headband, you're going to want to repeat the same process on the inside. I did struggle a little bit with this, but I really wanted to make sure that both pieces were kind of layered over the top of each other. And again, with that trim at the end of the fabric, I wanted to hide that. Now, since the inside of the headband is not going to be seen by anyone and it's just going to be on my head, I didn't really care that much about how it looked. But once I kind of covered it, I did go back in with the second piece of fabric to really make it a seamless. The extra fabric will help make the headband really comfortable on my head when I'm wearing it, and it'll cover all the excess hot glue. Next, you're going to want to take those 4 ears that you made and you're going to want to cut some squares of fabric. You're going to want to make sure that you have some excess fabric allowance also so you can make it fluffy. So then what I'm doing is really just hot gluing the corners around the ears, leaving the edge or the rounded part of the ear left open, and you'll see why in a little bit. This is how all 4 of your ears should look, with the ends being open to allow room for cotton pads. I've seen people use some other things, but this is what I had on hand. But really, the cotton pads allow for the ear to have that padded look on both sides of the ears. It's really important that you have the seam allowance because once you add the padding into the ears, it does stretch the fabric and doesn't leave enough room for it to fold over at the end to cover the ear. Another thing that's really helpful is splitting them in half and then folding them over when inserting them into the ear. That helped me get the most padding as I could, but also really made it a really good feel and look. Next, you're going to want to fold over the fabric and glue it together. Again, you're going to want to make sure you have a good enough seam allowance because it shouldn't look like this. But once you fold it over, you're going to want to hold the glue down for about 5 to 10 seconds on each side, really to ensure that everything is in place and that it's together. Once you're done, this is how all 4 of your ears should look. From there, I wanted to make sure that it looked correct on my headband, so I just did a test run with that. And then you have to glue both sides of the ears together. So what I did was I did a crisscross and then some squiggles with the hot glue gun. And then I really just put the ears together to make sure it was firm and held together. And then you'll repeat that twice. Once finished, it's important that you get some type of trim or ribbon to cover where the ends of the ears meet. I had some excess ribbon from Christmas, so I decided to use that. And then I slowly went through with my hot glue gun to glue it down together. From there, you can start gluing both of your ears onto your headband. I did use my other headband to get a placeholder for where my ears should go to make sure that they looked even and were in a good place and they looked, pretty similar to the inspiration. Once both of your ears are complete, you're going to want to cut your fabric into a rectangle and then fold it four different ways as seen here. This will be your bow. It's really important that you know the bow is the size that you want it to be, but that you make your bow this way. You're also going to need a small black rubber band to hold the bow together. Now, once you've folded your fabric four ways, you're going to want to scrunch it up from the middle like so. That way you can start to make the bow structure. From there, you're going to want to take that small black rubber band and wrap it around the middle so that it's held in place. From there, I did take a small piece of fabric and wrapped it around where that rubber band is showing and hot glued it together to hide it and really make that bow structure. From there, I put the bow where I wanted it to go. I hot glued the back of the ribbon together and then I also hot glued the ends of the ribbon as well. Lastly, to give my ears some more personality, I'm just using some extra gems and some E700 glue and kind of just placing them all over the ears to really give it an extra umph. Once you finish your ears, you're going to want to let them sit for about 12 hours and then you're going to remove all of the hot glue. Overall, it's a pretty simple process, and that's how I made my ears.